The sound of knuckles pounding on my front door jolted me out of my quiet morning coffee ritual. I remember how the ceramic mug trembled slightly in my hand, sending ripples across the dark surface of my drink, much like how my life was about to be disturbed. Outside, the September sun bathed my modest Raleigh neighborhood in golden light, creating a deceptive sense of peace. When I opened the door, there they were, Olivia and Daniel, my own flesh and blood, faces pale, eyes wide with what I once would have mistaken for genuine distress. Their hands wrung together in practiced desperation, a performance I had seen countless times before, but had only recently learned to recognize for what it truly was. "Mom, please. The rent is overdue again. We're about to get kicked out. You have to help us." Their voices trembled, not from love, but from fear of losing the lifestyle they believed was their birthright. Standing behind them, towering with crossed arms and an expression carved from stone, was Mr. Lawson, their landlord. His gaze was sharp and unyielding, cutting through their performance to the truth underneath. I felt the weight of watching eyes, Mrs. Peterson watering hers, hydrangeas across the street, old Mr. Jenkins pausing his newspaper reading on the porch next door. The whole block seemed to hold its breath, neighbors suddenly finding reasons to linger outside, drawn to the unfolding drama like moths to flame. Looking into my children's eyes, I searched for even a flicker of genuine remorse or love. There was none, just the familiar hunger that had consumed our relationship for years. My heart didn't break anymore. It had been broken the day they took the $22,000 I gave them for our family Hawaii trip and left me behind, laughing as they said those words I would never forget. Only for family. So now, standing on my own doorstep, with autumn leaves swirling around our feet and the neighborhood as our silent witness, I whispered back the words that had scarred me, but had now become my shield. Only for family, remember? The shock that washed over their faces was priceless. A moment of perfect clarity when they realized the rules of our relationship had fundamentally changed. And Mr. Lawson's raised eyebrow ensured the truth didn't just hang between us, it echoed across the street, reverberating through our little corner of Raleigh. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one on my knees. And in that singular, perfect moment, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a very long time. Dignity. This is my story. I used to believe that sacrifice was the purest form of love. After losing Richard to a sudden heart attack 12 years ago, my children became my entire world. I was determined to give them everything, to be both mother and father, to ensure they never felt the absence of what had been taken from them. Our modest home in Raleigh became a monument to that sacrifice. The walls held memories of birthday parties I'd worked double shifts to afford, of Christmas mornings made magical despite my exhaustion, of college acceptance letters celebrated with champagne I couldn't really spare the money for. "Mom, you work too hard," Olivia would sometimes say, patting my hand across the dinner table, her expression a perfect mask of concern. At 32, she had her father's amber eyes and my stubborn chin, but none of the work ethic either of us had possessed. "Someone has to keep this family going," I'd reply, smiling through the bone-deep fatigue. Daniel, 5 years younger than his sister, would merely look up high from his phone long enough to ask for seconds. He had grown into a handsome young man with Richard's broad shoulders and easy charm, but without the responsibility that had made his father so reliable. The pattern established itself gradually, almost imperceptibly. Olivia's graphic design career was always just about to take off, requiring my financial support through the rough patch. Daniel's various entrepreneurial ventures needed seed money that somehow never yielded any harvest. Their apartments were always too expensive, their cars always breaking down, their credit cards perpetually maxed out. And I, Linda Carmichael, widow and mother, became the eternal safety net. "I'll pay you back, Mom, I promise," Daniel said the day I handed him $3,400 to cover the security deposit on his newest apartment. He had moved 4 times in 3 years, each place more expensive than the last. "Don't worry about it, honey. That's what family is for," I replied, the words so automatic they required no thought. My friend Janet would sip her wine during our monthly get-togethers and shake her head. "Linda, those kids are bleeding you dry," she'd say, her face creased with concern. "When was the last time you did something for yourself?" I would laugh it off. "They're going through a rough patch. They'll find their feet." But the rough patch stretched into years. My retirement fund dwindled. I postponed needed dental work. I learned to ignore the persistent pain in my knee that required surgery I couldn't afford. The vacation I'd promised myself after Richard died remained a distant dream. Then came February of last year. I was sitting at my kitchen table, bills spread before me like a depressing puzzle I couldn't quite solve, when an idea struck me with the force of revelation. A family trip, a real one, to Hawaii, Richard's dream destination. We could heal old wounds, rebuild connections, remember what it meant to be a family beyond the exchange of money and obligation. I called Olivia immediately, my voice trembling with excitement. What if we all went to Hawaii? The three of us, just like Dad always wanted. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Hawaii? Her voice perked up. That would be amazing, Mom. Daniel would love it too. Over the following weeks, I withdrew my remaining savings, $22,000 that I'd managed to set aside despite everything. I researched resorts, excursions, restaurants. I bought new swimsuits and sundresses, my heart lighter than it had been in years. I can take care of all the bookings, Olivia offered. You've got so much on your plate already, Mom. Let me handle the details. I gratefully transferred the money to her account. Just make sure to book things we can all enjoy together, I said. Of course, she replied. This trip is about family. The departure date was set for July 12th. 3 days before, I called Olivia to confirm our meeting time at the airport. Airport? She asked, confusion in her voice. There was noise in the background. Voices, laughter, what sounded like waves. For Hawaii, I said, a cold feeling beginning to spread through my chest. We leave on Saturday, remember? There was, a pause, and then muffled voices as though she had covered the phone. When she came back, her voice was different, harder, dismissive. Oh, Mom, I thought you understood. This trip is just for me and Daniel. We really needed a break. But the money was for a family trip, I said, my voice small and hollow. For all of us. I heard Daniel's voice in the background, then Olivia's laughter. She came back to the phone, not bothering to lower her voice as she said, It's only for family, Mom. Only for family. As if I, the woman who had given birth to them, raised them, sacrificed everything for them, was somehow not family. We're having the best time, she continued, oblivious or indifferent to my silence. The resort is amazing. Got to go. We're heading to a luau. The call ended, leaving me standing in my kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. Outside, the summer sun beat down on my small garden, the flowers I had carefully tended wilting in the North Carolina heat. Inside, something else was dying. A lifetime of illusions about what it meant to be a mother, what it meant to love. That night, I sat alone on my porch swing, watching the fireflies rise from the grass. For the first time, I allowed myself to see the truth that had been in front of me all along. I wasn't family to my children. I was an ATM with a heartbeat. And that realization, painful as it was, became the first step on a journey I never expected to take, one that would eventually lead me back to myself. The weeks after that phone call passed in a blur of grief and clarity. I moved through my days mechanically, going to work at the insurance office where I'd been a claims processor for 15 years, coming home to an empty house that suddenly seemed to echo with all the sacrifices it had witnessed. The walls held shadow memories, phantom images of 2 children growing up, learning to walk, bringing home report cards, graduating, memories that now felt like poorly scripted, scenes from a movie I'd misunderstood. My first act of rebellion was small but significant. When Olivia called 3 weeks after returning from Hawaii, her voice casual as though nothing had happened, I let it go to voicemail. The message she left was predictable. Hey, Mom, just checking in. Call me back when you can. Oh, and I might be a little short on rent this month. Nothing major, but could use some help. Love you. I deleted it without calling back. 2 days later, Daniel texted, Mom, what's up? Olivia said she can't reach you. Everything okay? I typed back a response I would have never considered before. I'm fine. Just busy. Hope Hawaii was nice. The flurry of texts and calls that followed revealed just how unaccustomed they were to any boundary from me. When I finally answered a call from Olivia, her voice had lost its casual edge. Mom, what's going on? We need to talk about my rent situation. It's getting kind of urgent. I stood in my kitchen, gripping the counter for support as I said words that felt foreign in my mouth. I'm sorry, Olivia, but I can't help this month. My finances are tight right now. Tight? Since when? You've always managed before. The entitlement. In her voice was unmistakable now that I was finally listening for it. Things change, I said simply. Is this about Hawaii? Are you seriously holding a grudge because we took one vacation without you? The injustice of her framing made me momentarily speechless. God, Mom, we're adults. We're allowed to do things on our own. With money I gave you for a family trip, I said, my voice steady, despite the tremor in my hands. $22,000 of my savings. Oh, here we go with the guilt trip. Classic mom move. She sighed dramatically. Look, we'll take you next time, okay? But right now, I really need $200 for rent. Can you transfer it today? The casual way she dismissed the theft, because that's what it was, I realize now, and immediately pivoted to another demand. Finally broke something in me. Not my heart this time, but the chains I had wrapped around myself. No, I said. I can't. What do you mean you can't? Mom, I'll be evicted. Then maybe it's time to find a place you can actually afford, I replied, surprised by my own calmness. Or ask your brother. You two seem close these days. I ended the call before she could respond, then sat down at my kitchen table and wept. Not for the money, not even for the betrayal, but for the years I had spent believing in a family that existed only in my imagination. That weekend, Janet came over with a bottle of wine and a sympathetic ear. We sat on my back porch as I told her everything. The Hawaii trip, the calls, my newfound resistance. It's about damn time, she said, refilling our glasses. Linda, I've watched you drain yourself dry for those two for years. They're adults, for God's sake. Adults who've never had to face a consequence in their lives. I feel like I've failed as a mother, I admitted, watching a cardinal flit between the branches of the old oak tree in my yard. If I'd raised them right, they wouldn't be like this. Janet shook her head firmly. No, you gave them everything. Love, support, opportunities. What they did with it was their choice. And now what you do is your choice. What would that even look like? I asked, genuinely uncertain. I had been mother for so long that Linda seemed like a stranger to me. It looks like whatever you want it to look like, Janet said, her smile warm in the fading light. That's the beauty of it. That night I did. Something I hadn't done in years. I made a list just for me, not groceries, not bills, not things the children needed, but things I wanted. Places I wanted to see, classes I wanted to take, dreams I had deferred for so long I had almost forgotten them. By the time I finished, the list covered 2 pages, and I fell asleep with it beside my pillow, like a promise to myself. The next morning, I called my doctor and scheduled the knee surgery I had been putting off for 3 years. I enrolled in a painting class at the community center. I set up a new savings account, separate from my checking account that the kids occasionally still accessed. The calls and texts from Olivia and Daniel intensified, growing increasingly desperate as they realized their safety net was fraying. I answered some, ignored others. When I did speak to them, I was polite but firm. No, I couldn't help with rent. No, I couldn't co-sign a loan. No, I couldn't lend them my car while theirs was in the shop, again. What's happened to you? Daniel demanded during one particularly heated call in late August. You've changed. Yes, I said, realizing it was true. I have. What neither of them understood was that this wasn't about punishment or revenge. It was about survival. Mine. Years of putting their needs first had left me financially and emotionally depleted. If I didn't change course now, at 52, what would be left of me at 62 or 72? September arrived with cooler temperatures and a sense of possibility. My knee surgery was scheduled for October. I had made friends in my painting class, real friends who asked about me, not what I could do for them. I was sleeping better than I had in years. Then came the morning of the knock on my door. Olivia and Daniel with their landlord, Mr. Lawson, standing on my porch with desperation and entitlement competing in their eyes. The moment that would prove to be a turning point for all of us. Only for family, remember? Those 4 words, their words, turned back on them, hung in the air between us. And in that silence, heavy with consequence, I felt something shift in the universe. The scales that had been imbalanced for so long finally tipped toward justice. I had no idea then just how far those scales would swing, or how completely all our lives were about to change. The silence that followed my words seemed to stretch into eternity. Mr. Lawson, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and the weathered face of someone who had seen every trick in the book, cleared his throat. His eyes, previously cold with professional detachment, now held something else. A grudging respect, perhaps. Mrs. Carmichael, he said, his voice measured, I apologize for the intrusion. Your children assured me you were expecting us. I stepped back slightly, one hand still on the door. They didn't mention anything to me, Mr. Lawson. Mom, Daniel hissed, his handsome face flushing with anger and embarrassment. At 27, he still had the boyish charm that had gotten him out of trouble his entire life, but today it wasn't working. "Can we please talk about this inside?" "I think right here is fine," I replied calmly. The morning air was crisp with early autumn, and somewhere down the street a lawnmower hummed. Normal life continuing all around us while my world shifted on its axis. Olivia pushed her designer sunglasses up into her auburn hair, revealing eyes red-rimmed from either lack of sleep or strategic crying. "Mom, this is serious. We're going to be homeless if you don't help. Is that what you want? Your own children on the street?" Mr. Lawson shifted uncomfortably. "The situation is this, Mrs. Carmichael. Your children are 3 months behind on rent for their duplex. That's $4,500 total. I've been more than patient, but I have a business to run." 3 months? I repeated, genuinely surprised. The amount was substantially more than I had expected, and it explained the escalating desperation in their recent calls. "We've had some unexpected expenses," Daniel said quickly, his eyes darting to Mr. Lawson and back to me. "We were going to catch up, but things kept coming up. Things like Hawaii?" The words slipped out before I could stop them, but I didn't regret them. Mr. Lawson's eyebrows shot up. "Hawaii?" Olivia made a dismissive gesture. "That was different. We needed that trip for our mental health. Mom, please, we can talk about all this later. Right now, we just need to settle things with Mr. Lawson." The casual entitlement in her voice, as if the theft of my savings for their luxury vacation was a minor disagreement to be brushed aside, ignited something in me. Not anger exactly, but certainty. The fog of maternal guilt that had clouded my judgment for so long finally lifted completely. "Mr. Lawson," I said, looking directly at him, "I sympathize with your position, but I'm not in a position to bail my adult children out this time. They'll need to find a solution themselves." Olivia's mouth fell open. Daniel took a step toward me, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You can't be serious," he said, his voice a dangerous whisper. "After everything we've been through as a family?" "Family," I repeated, the word suddenly bitter on my tongue. "Like the family trip to Hawaii that I paid for but wasn't invited to join? The one where you two spent my $22,000 on yourselves and told me it was only for family?" The color drained from both their faces as they realized I was saying this in front of not just Mr. Lawson, but the neighbors who had given up any pretense of not listening. Mrs. Peterson had abandoned her hydrangeas entirely and was standing with her watering can frozen in midair. Mr. Jenkins had lowered his newspaper and was watching with undisguised interest. "That's not... We didn't..." Olivia stammered, suddenly conscious of their audience. "You didn't what?" I asked quietly. "Didn't think I'd ever stand up for myself? Or didn't think anyone would ever find out how you've treated me?" Mr. Lawson cleared his throat again, his expression now one of barely disguised disgust as he looked at my children. "I think I understand the situation better now. Mrs. Carmichael, again, I apologize for the intrusion." He turned to Olivia and Daniel. "As for you two, I expect the property vacated by the end of the week. Consider yourselves formally evicted." "You can't do that," Olivia protested, her voice rising. "We have rights." "Yes, you do," Mr. Lawson agreed. "And I have documentation of 3 months of unpaid rent, plus the legal right to evict. I've been lenient because you kept promising your mother would cover it. Now I see that was a lie, too." Daniel turned to me, his face a mask of betrayal, as if I had somehow wronged him. "I can't believe you'd do this to us. Your own children." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw for the first time, not my little boy, not Richard's son, but a grown man who had made his choices and now faced the consequences. "I'm not doing anything to you, Daniel. This is the result of your own actions." "We're your children," Olivia said, tears now streaming down her face. I wondered, briefly, if they were real this time or just another performance. "You're supposed to love us unconditionally." "I do love you," I replied, surprised to find it was still true despite everything. "But love doesn't mean enabling behavior that hurts both of us. It doesn't mean letting you drain me until there's nothing left." Mr. Lawson nodded once, almost to himself, then turned to leave. "End of the week," he repeated over his shoulder. "I'll send the formal notice by email today." As he walked away, my children stood on my porch, stunned into silence for perhaps the first time in their adult lives. The script they had counted on, mother caves, mother rescues, mother sacrifices, had been rewritten without their input or consent. What are we supposed to do now? Daniel finally asked, his voice small and uncertain. I felt a pang of something. Not regret, but perhaps nostalgia for the simpler days when I could kiss away their hurts and make everything better. Those days were gone now, buried under years of taking and taking until the well ran dry. You're both intelligent, capable adults, I said gently. You'll figure it out. People do every day. So that's it? You're just cutting us off? After everything you've always said about family sticking together? Olivia's mascara had smudged beneath her eyes, making her look younger and more vulnerable. I'm not cutting you off, I corrected her. I'm just not continuing to cut myself down to build you up. There's a difference. They left eventually, after more tears and recriminations, promises to change and threats of never speaking to me again. Sometimes in the same breath. I watched them walk down my driveway, get into Olivia's leased BMW that I had co-signed for, and drive away. Then I went back inside, made a fresh cup of coffee, and sat at my kitchen table. I expected to feel guilt, or grief, or even triumph. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Peace. The weight I had carried for so long, the constant worry about their finances, their futures, their happiness at the expense of my own, had finally been set down. On my refrigerator, held by a magnet from Richard's favorite fishing spot, was the list I had made of things I wanted for myself. I studied it now, running my finger down dreams deferred but not forgotten. Maybe some of them were still possible, even at 52. Maybe especially at 52, with the wisdom to appreciate them properly. I picked up my phone and called Janet. It's done, I said when she answered. They came with their landlord. I said no. How do you feel? She asked, concern evident in her voice. I considered the question carefully. Lighter, I finally said. Like I can breathe again. Good, she said firmly. It's about time you put yourself first for once. Not first, I corrected her. Just not last. Not anymore. After we hung up, I pulled out my calendar and circled October 15th, my surgery date, in red. Then I opened my laptop and did something I had been thinking about for weeks. I booked a spot on a guided tour of the Grand Canyon for next spring. Not Hawaii, not yet, but a start. A promise to myself that I intended to keep. As evening fell, I sat on my porch swing again, watching the fireflies emerge from the darkening yard. They blinked their secret messages to each other, tiny lights against the gathering dark. I thought about family, the one I had lost with Richard's death, the one I had tried to preserve with Olivia and Daniel, the one I might still create with friends who truly cared for me. Family, I was learning, wasn't just about blood or obligation. It was about mutual respect, reciprocal care, genuine connection. Maybe Olivia and Daniel would someday understand that. Maybe they wouldn't. But for the first time in years, I realized their choices were not my responsibility. My responsibility was to the woman who had given everything and received so little in return. The woman who was, finally, learning to put herself back together. Me. The following days unfolded with a strange mix of peace and tension. My house felt like a sanctuary. Quiet, ordered, mine. But every time the phone rang or there was a knock at the door, my heart would race with the anticipation of another confrontation. Olivia called 17 times that first day. Daniel sent 32 text messages, ranging from apologetic to accusatory to desperate. I answered none of them. Instead, I went to work, attended my painting class, and began the pre-surgery physical therapy exercises my doctor had recommended. I cooked proper meals for myself instead of grabbing whatever was quickest. I slept without the weight of their problems pressing down on my chest. On Thursday, 4 days after the confrontation on my porch, Janet and I were having lunch at a small cafe downtown when she suddenly looked over my shoulder, her expression changing from relaxed to wary. Don't turn around, she said quietly, but Olivia just walked in. My hands froze around my sandwich. Is she alone? Yes, and she's seen us. She's coming over. I took a deep breath and set my sandwich down, wiping my hands carefully on my napkin. When I heard Olivia's voice behind me, I was ready. Mom, finally. I've been trying to reach you for days. I turned to face my daughter. She looked different. Her usually perfect makeup was minimal, her designer clothes replaced by jeans and a simple blouse. Her eyes held shadows I hadn't seen before. Hello, Olivia, I said, keeping my voice neutral. This is a surprise. Is it? When you won't answer your phone or your door? There was an edge to her voice, though she was clearly trying to control it in the public setting. I've been worried sick. Janet made a small noise that might have been a suppressed laugh. Olivia shot her a look before focusing back on me. May I join you? She asked, her tone suggesting it wasn't really a question. I glanced at Janet, who shrugged slightly, then nodded. For a few minutes, Janet and I were just finishing up. Olivia pulled out a chair and sat down, placing her purse, still designer I noticed, on the table. We need to talk about what happened on Sunday. I think everything was said quite clearly on Sunday, I replied, taking a sip of my iced tea. Mom, we're being evicted. Do you understand that? We have nowhere to go. We? I asked. You and Daniel are being evicted together? She shifted uncomfortably. Well, yes. We've been sharing the duplex. It was more economical that way. Janet raised an eyebrow but remained silent, witnessing but not intervening. I was grateful for her presence, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this, that someone had my back. I see, I said. And what's your plan? Olivia blinked, clearly caught off guard by the question. My plan? Yes. You're 32 years old, Olivia. Surely you have some idea of what to do next. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. Mom, I thought maybe I could stay with you, just temporarily, until I find a new place. Daniel's crashing with a friend from his basketball league. I felt a momentary pang of sympathy. Despite everything, seeing my daughter in distress still affected me. But I also remembered the countless times I had rescued them, only for them to land in the exact same situation months later. The definition of insanity, they say, is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. I don't think that would be a good idea, I said gently but firmly. Why not? You have the spare room. It wouldn't be for long. Because we both need to establish new patterns, Olivia. Healthier ones. Her face hardened. So this is punishment. For Hawaii. No, I said, shaking my head. This isn't about punishment. It's about growth. Yours and mine. I can't keep rescuing you from the consequences of your own choices, and you need to learn that your actions have real impact. So you're just going to let me be homeless? Your own daughter? Her voice rose slightly, causing a few nearby diners to glance our way. You won't be homeless, I said, maintaining my calm. You have options. You could find a more affordable apartment. You could get a roommate who isn't your brother. You could pick up extra design work. It's not that simple, she protested. The job market is terrible right now. Then maybe it's time to expand your search. Beyond just the high-end agencies, I suggested. Or consider a stable job while you build your portfolio on the side. Olivia's face flushed with anger or embarrassment. Perhaps both. I can't believe you're doing this to me. After everything I've been through. Janet, who had been admirably restrained until now, finally spoke up. What exactly have you been through, Olivia? Because from where I'm sitting, you've had a pretty cushy ride at your mother's expense. This isn't your business, Janet, Olivia snapped. Actually, I've made it my business, Janet replied calmly. Someone needs to have your mom's back since her children certainly don't. Olivia turned back to me, tears welling in her eyes. Is that what you think? That I don't care about you? I considered my words carefully. I think you love me in your way, Olivia. But I also think you've gotten used to seeing me primarily as a resource rather than a person with my own needs and limits. That's not fair, she whispered, a tear tracking down her cheek. Whether the emotion was genuine or another performance, I couldn't tell anymore. Perhaps the line had blurred even for her. Maybe not, I conceded. But it's how I feel, and my feelings matter too. She was silent for a moment, absorbing this. Then she reached across the table and placed her hand over mine, a gesture so reminiscent of the little girl she had once been that my heart contracted painfully. I do love you, Mom, she said softly. I know I've been selfish. Hawaii was wrong. We should never have done that to you. I waited, sensing there was more coming. But I really am in trouble now, she continued. I don't know what to do. And there it was. The acknowledgement of wrongdoing immediately followed by another appeal for help. The pattern was so familiar it was almost comforting in its predictability. I gently withdrew my hand from beneath hers. You'll figure it out, Olivia. You're smarter and more capable than you give yourself credit for. So that's your final answer? You won't help at all? The vulnerability in her expression was hardening again into resentment. I didn't say I wouldn't help, I clarified. I said I wouldn't let you move in. There's a difference. A flicker of hope crossed her face. What kind of help? I can give you some job leads. I can review your resume. I can even help you look for an affordable apartment. But I won't give you money, and I won't be your safety net anymore. She considered this, clearly disappointed, but seemingly resigned. I guess it's better than nothing. It's what I can offer right now, I said, ignoring the implied criticism. Take it or leave it. After a moment, she nodded. Okay, I'll take it. As she stood to leave, she hesitated, then leaned down and kissed my cheek, something she hadn't done spontaneously in years. I am sorry, Mom. About Hawaii. About everything. I nodded, not quite ready to accept the apology fully, but acknowledging it. I know. After she left, Janet and I sat in silence for a moment. Then she raised her water glass in a small toast. You held your ground. I'm proud of you. It was harder than I expected, I admitted. When she looked at me like that, like the little girl who needed her mommy, Janet finished for me. That's the hook, Linda. That's how they reel you back in, every time. I nodded, understanding the truth of her words. Do you think she meant it? The apology? Janet considered this. Maybe, in the moment. But real change takes time and consistency. One conversation in a cafe doesn't erase years of behavior. I know you're right, I sighed. I just wish that you could fix it for them, she said gently. That's the mother in you, and it's beautiful. But sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is step back and let their children figure things out for themselves. As we left the cafe and walked back to our cars, I thought about Olivia's visit. Had it changed anything? Was it the beginning of a new understanding between us, or just another manipulation? Only time would tell. What I did know was that I had maintained my boundaries, wobbly as they still felt, and that was progress. Small steps, day by day, reclaiming pieces of myself that had been given away for too long. That night, I received a text from Daniel. Liv said she talked to you. I'm sorry too, Mom, about everything. I miss you. I read it several times, feeling the familiar pull of maternal longing. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to open my door and my arms and go back to the way things were. But the way things were had been slowly destroying all of us. After careful thought, I typed back, I miss you too. When you're ready to talk, really talk, I'm here. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It wasn't a return to the old patterns. But it was an open door, just a crack, to something new and potentially better. It was, I thought, as I set my phone aside and picked up the novel I was finally making time to read. A beginning. October 15th arrived with golden light filtering through crimson leaves. Fall in Raleigh had always been my favorite season, but this year it felt especially significant. A physical manifestation of the changes taking place in my life. Things were falling away, making room for whatever might come next. Janet picked me up at 5:30 a.m. for my knee surgery, the procedure I had postponed for years while other priorities, always my children's priorities, took precedence. The morning air was crisp as we drove to the hospital. The streets quiet, except for the occasional early commuter. Nervous? Janet asked, glancing over at me. A little, I admitted, but mostly just ready to have it done. She reached across the console and squeezed my hand. You'll be fine, and I'll be there when you wake up. The hospital intake process was efficient, almost mechanical. Forms to sign, questions to answer, a bracelet fastened around my wrist. A nurse led me to a small changing room where I exchanged my clothes for a thin hospital gown that tied in the back. Your daughter can help you with that, the nurse said, nodding toward Janet, who had followed us. Oh, she's not, I began, then stopped, looking at Janet's amused expression. Thank you, I said instead. After the nurse left, Janet helped me with the gown ties. Daughter, huh? Should I be flattered or insulted? She joked. Definitely flattered. You don't look a day over 40. And you don't lie convincingly, she laughed. But I'll take it. Once I was settled in the pre-op bay, curtains drawn around us for a semblance of privacy, my phone buzzed with a text. I expected it to be from work. I had taken 2 weeks off for the surgery and recovery. But instead, it was from Olivia. Good luck. Today, Mom. I know you'll do great. Love you. I stared at the screen, surprised. I hadn't told either of my children about the surgery. Everything okay? Janet asked, noticing my expression. I showed her the text. How did she know? Janet had the grace to look slightly guilty. I might have run into her at the grocery store yesterday. It came up in conversation. Janet, I sighed. What? She's still your daughter, Linda. I thought she should know. Before I could respond, another text came through, this one from Daniel. Thinking of you today, Mom. Let me know if you need anything after. Something warm and unexpected bloomed in my chest. Not the desperate hope of reconciliation that had kept me trapped for so long, but a quieter, more cautious feeling. Maybe, just maybe, something was shifting for them too. See? Janet said, peering at my phone. They're trying. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I typed quick responses to both of them. Simple thank yous, nothing more, before the anesthesiologist arrived to discuss the procedure. The next few hours passed in a blur of medical jargon, consent forms, and finally the cool flow of anesthesia entering my veins. I remember counting backward from 10, making it only to 7 before darkness claimed me. I woke to the muffled beeping of machines and the distant sound of voices. My mouth was desert dry, my leg a distant ache beneath layers of bandages and medication. As promised, Janet was there, reading a mystery novel in the chair beside my bed. "Welcome back," she said, setting the book aside when she noticed my eyes open. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been hit by a very selective truck," I croaked. "Just my knee, though, so that's something." She helped me take small sips of water, the cool liquid heaven against my parched throat. "The doctor said everything went perfectly. You'll be doing cartwheels in no time. Let's aim for walking without a cane first," I said, attempting a smile. After the fog of anesthesia began to clear, a nurse came to check my vitals and help me attempt the first, excruciating shift from lying to sitting. Every movement sent sharp waves of pain through my leg despite the medication. "You're doing great," the nurse encouraged. "The first day is always the worst." By evening, I was cleared to go home, with strict instructions for medication, physical therapy, appointments, and activity restrictions. Janet helped me into a wheelchair, then into her car for the careful journey back to my house. The surprise came when we pulled into my driveway. There, on my front porch, sat Daniel and Olivia, both looking up anxiously as the car approached. "What are they doing here?" I asked Janet, a complex mix of emotions rising in me: wariness, hope, the instinctive gladness of seeing my children. "I might have mentioned what time you'd be discharged," she admitted, "but I swear that's all I did. This was their idea." Daniel approached the car first, opening my door with uncharacteristic care. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice softer than I had heard it in years. "We thought you might need some help getting settled." I looked past him to Olivia, who stood on the porch, her expression uncertain. She had a paper bag in her arms that appeared to be from my favorite deli downtown. "We brought dinner," Daniel continued when I didn't immediately respond. "And, we cleaned up a little inside. Just basic stuff. Dishes, vacuuming. Hope that's okay." I was stunned. In all the years since they had moved out, neither of my children had ever offered to help around my house. It had always been the other way around, with me driving to their places to help with laundry or cleaning during their busy periods. "That's thoughtful," I managed. "Thank you." With Daniel on one side and Janet on the other, I made the painful journey from car to house, each step a reminder that healing, of any kind, was rarely swift or easy. Inside, I was surprised to find my living room rearranged slightly. The coffee table moved aside to make room for the rented hospital bed that would be my sleeping place during early recovery, pillows and blankets neatly arranged, a small table within reach holding water, medications, and the TV remote. "We set everything up the way the discharge instructions said," Olivia explained, watching my face carefully. "The rental company delivered the bed this morning." "I don't know what to say," I admitted, easing myself down onto the edge of the bed. "This is incredibly helpful." An awkward silence fell. We were all navigating unfamiliar terrain, my children offering care instead of demanding it, me accepting help without the underlying expectation that it came with strings attached. Janet, ever practical, broke the tension. "How about we get some food in everyone? Olivia, you said you brought dinner?" As we ate the soup and sandwiches Olivia had brought, the conversation remained carefully neutral. My surgery, the fall weather, a new restaurant that had opened downtown. No mention of Hawaii, of money, of the confrontation on my porch. It was as if we had all silently agreed to a temporary truce, a ceasefire in the ongoing negotiation of our relationship. After dinner, when my medication began to make me drowsy, Janet announced it was time for her to head home. "Will you two be staying a while?" she asked my children, a pointed question beneath her casual tone. "I thought I might stay the night," Daniel said, glancing at me. "Just in case Mom needs anything. I can sleep on the couch." "Me too," Olivia added. Quickly. "If that's okay with you, Mom?" I considered their offers. Part of me, the part that had been hurt so deeply, wanted to refuse, to maintain the distance I had worked so hard to establish. But another part recognized this for what it might be, A genuine attempt at amends, or at least at understanding. That would be helpful, I said finally. Just for tonight. After Janet left with promises. To check in tomorrow, I found myself alone with my children for the first time since the confrontation. Daniel busied himself setting up makeshift beds on the couch and the old recliner. Olivia organized my medications in a pill organizer, writing down the schedule in her neat handwriting. "Why are you doing this?" I asked finally, the question I'd been holding back all evening. They exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. It was Olivia who answered, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Because it's the right thing to do," she said. "And because we've been thinking a lot about what you said, about how we've treated you. The past few weeks have been a wake-up call," Daniel added, sitting on the edge of the coffee table. "Having to figure things out. Without just calling you for money, it's been hard, but it's also been, I don't know, educational? We found a new apartment," Olivia continued. "Nothing fancy, just a basic 2-bedroom in Cary. The rent is actually affordable. And I got a job," Daniel said, a hint of pride in his voice. "It's just at a sporting goods store. Nothing like the startups I was trying to launch, but it's steady. Money." I listened to these developments with cautious optimism. They were small steps, perhaps, but in the right direction. "That's good," I said simply. "I'm proud of you both for figuring things out." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "We don't deserve that. Not after how we've treated you." "Maybe not," I agreed, the medication making me more direct than I might otherwise have been. "But that's the thing about family, real family. It's not about deserving. It's about growing and learning together, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Daniel looked down at his hands. "We really messed up with Hawaii, Mom. I don't know if you can ever forgive us for that." "I don't know either," I said honestly. "That's something only time will tell. But this, what you're doing tonight, it's a start." As my eyelids grew heavy with medication and exhaustion, I saw my children exchange another look, this one tinged with something that might have been hope. "Get some rest, Mom," Olivia said, adjusting my pillows. "We'll be right here if you need anything." As I drifted toward sleep, I thought about forgiveness, how it wasn't a single moment of magnanimity, but a process, unfolding day by day, in small gestures and changed behaviors. I didn't know if we would ever fully repair what had been broken between us, but for the first time, I believed it might be possible. And that, for tonight at least, was enough. Recovery is a humbling process. In the days following my surgery, I found myself dependent in ways I hadn't been since childhood, needing help to bathe, to dress, to prepare meals. The physical therapy exercises left me sweating and frustrated. Progress measured in degrees of bend and straighten rather than miles walked or tasks completed. To my surprise, my children didn't disappear after that first night. Instead, they worked out a schedule between them. Daniel coming by in the mornings before his shifts at the sporting goods store, Olivia taking afternoons and evenings when her freelance design work allowed. Janet filled in the gaps, a steady presence keeping watch over all of us as we navigated this new territory. "You don't have to do this," I told Olivia one afternoon as she helped me through my exercises, her hands gentle but firm on my healing knee. "I know," she said, focused on counting repetitions. 15, 16. "I want to, Mom." 17. 18. "Because you feel guilty?" I pressed, wincing as she guided my leg through its limited range of motion. She paused, considering the question. "That's part of it," she admitted. "But it's also because I've missed you. The real you. Not just the you that bailed us out of trouble." There was something different about her these days, a groundedness that hadn't been there before. The designer clothes were less frequent, replaced by simple jeans and sweaters. Her phone, once a constant companion, often stayed in her purse during our time together. "Tell me about your new place," I said, changing the subject as we finished the exercises. "Is it working out?" She nodded, helping me back to the rented hospital bed that dominated my living room. "It's small, but it's clean. The landlord is strict but fair. Nothing like the duplex, but we're making it work." "And the job hunt?" A small smile. "I got a part-time position at a local design firm. It's not glamorous, mostly laying out brochures and flyers for small businesses. But it's steady work, and I'm still freelancing on the side." "That's wonderful, Olivia," I said, meaning it. "I always knew you had the talent. You just needed to be willing to start at the beginning, like everyone else." She adjusted my pillows, her movements efficient but tender. I kept waiting for the big break, the perfect opportunity. I thought anything less wasn't worth my time. She shook her head, rueful. Pride, I guess. Or laziness. Maybe both. I reached for her hand, squeezed it briefly. These moments of honesty between us were still new, fragile things, like spring shoots pushing through thawing ground. We all make mistakes, I said. The important thing is learning from them. Later that week, Daniel arrived for his morning shift with a folder tucked under his arm. After helping me with breakfast and my morning medication, he pulled up a chair next to my bed. "I've been wanting to show you something," he said, uncharacteristically serious. "I've been working on a budget." He opened the folder, revealing neatly printed spreadsheets with income and expense projections. "The sporting goods job pays less than I'd like, but I've applied for an assistant manager position that would bump up my salary. In the meantime, I've been cutting expenses wherever I can." I studied the papers, noting the realistic figures, the careful allocations for rent, utilities, food, no extravagant entries for entertainment or travel, no line item for mom's contribution. "This looks very responsible, Daniel," I said, genuine pride warming my voice. "When did you learn to do all this?" He looked sheepish. "YouTube, mostly. And there are some good apps that help track spending. I should have done this years ago." But he trailed off, then met my eyes directly. "It was easier to just ask you for money." The admission hung between us. Simple, honest, a recognition of the dynamic that had shaped our relationship for so long. "I'm also looking into community college courses," he continued. "Business administration, maybe. Something practical that could lead to a real career, not just the get-rich-quick schemes I've been chasing." I remembered all the ventures he had pitched me over the years: cryptocurrency investments, dropshipping businesses, an app that would revolutionize dog walking. Each one had required seed money, each one had failed, and each failure had somehow become my responsibility to cushion. "That sounds like a solid plan," I said. "I'm proud of you for thinking long-term." He fidgeted with the edge of the spreadsheet. "I keep thinking about what you said that day on the porch, about us seeing you as an ATM with a heartbeat. It hit hard because it was true." He looked up, his eyes, so like his father's, clouded with regret. "I'm sorry, Mom. I really am." Words I had waited years to hear, delivered without prompting or expectation. I felt something shift inside me, a knot loosening just slightly. "Thank you for saying that," I replied simply. "It means a lot." As October gave way to November, my recovery progressed steadily. The hospital bed was returned, replaced by a foam wedge for my regular bed. The walker became a cane, then occasionally no support at all for short distances around the house. My physical therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Bridget, pushed me harder each session, ignoring my complaints with professional cheerfulness. "Pain is just weakness leaving the body," she'd say, guiding me through one more excruciating set of exercises. "I think that's just something sadistic physical therapists made up," I'd retort. But I'd complete the set anyway. Through it all, my children remained present. Not constantly, as they had their own lives to rebuild, but consistently. They called when they couldn't visit. They remembered my medication schedule. They drove me to appointments. Small things, perhaps, but significant in their novelty. One evening in mid-November, Janet joined us for dinner at my house. A simple meal of lasagna that Olivia had prepared, with Daniel handling salad duty. As we ate, I noticed Janet watching my children with appraising eyes, like a cautious investor evaluating a risky prospect. "So," she said eventually, setting down her fork, "2 months ago, you two were living beyond your means in a place you couldn't afford, spending your mother's retirement on Hawaii trips, and generally behaving like entitled brats." She held up a hand as both began to protest. "Let me finish. Now you're in an affordable apartment, working steady jobs, and showing up for your mother when she needs you. That's quite a transformation. I'm curious what caused it." The bluntness of her question silenced the table. Daniel looked at Olivia, who looked at me, who looked back at Janet with a mixture of exasperation and affection. Always the direct one, my friend. "It's okay," I told my children. "Janet's just looking out for me. She's allowed to be skeptical." Daniel cleared his throat. "It's a fair question. The honest answer is rock bottom. When Mr. Lawson was standing there on Mom's porch and she said what she said," he paused, the memory still evidently painful. "It was like seeing ourselves through someone else's eyes for the first time, and it wasn't pretty. We had to move in with friends. Temporarily after the eviction," Olivia continued. "Sleeping on couches, keeping our stuff in storage. It was humbling, but necessary." Daniel added. We'd been living in a bubble where someone else always fixed our mistakes. When that someone wasn't there anymore, the bubble popped, Olivia finished. And reality hit hard. Janet nodded, her expression softening slightly. Well, better. Late than never, I suppose. Just don't expect me to throw you a parade for finally acting like adults in your 30s. Janet, I admonished gently, but my children both laughed. No parade necessary, Daniel assured her. We're still working on the basics. As the evening wound down and Janet prepared to leave, she pulled me aside in the kitchen under the pretext of helping with dessert plates. They seem sincere, she said in a low voice. But be careful, Linda. People can change, but it usually takes longer than a couple of months. I know, I assured her. I'm not expecting miracles, just progress. She studied my face. And you? How are you doing with all this? Not just the knee, but them being back in your life? I considered the question carefully. It's complicated. There are moments when I fall back into old patterns, wanting to fix things for them, feeling responsible for their happiness. But then I catch myself. It's like learning a new language. I still think in the old one sometimes, but I'm getting better at the translation. Janet nodded, satisfied. Just remember, you matter too. Your healing isn't just physical. After everyone had gone, I sat alone in my quiet living room, the house settling around me with familiar creaks and sighs. On the coffee table lay a brochure for the Grand Canyon tour I had booked, my promise to myself, still intact despite everything that had changed. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Dinner was nice. Sleep well, Mom. Love you. Simple words that once would have been followed by a request, an expectation. Now they stood alone, asking for nothing in return. I typed back, love you too. And I meant it. Not with the desperate, self-sacrificing love that had defined our relationship for so long, but with something clearer and healthier. A love with boundaries, a love that expected reciprocity, a love that could heal us all if we let it. Outside, a gentle rain began to fall, washing away the last of autumn's leaves, preparing the world for winter, for stillness, for rest, for the quiet work of renewal that happens beneath the surface, invisible but essential. I was ready for it all. December arrived with twinkling lights and a chill in the Raleigh air. My knee had progressed to the point where I could walk without a cane most days, though long distances still left me with a pronounced limp. Physical. Therapy continued twice weekly, each session leaving me both exhausted and stronger than before. The approaching holidays brought their own kind of therapy and challenge. Since Richard's death, Christmas had been a complicated affair, with my children making brief appearances between their preferred social engagements, often accepting expensive gifts while offering token presents in return. This year would be different by necessity. I had established new boundaries around money, and they were living within more modest means. The first hint of this change came when Olivia called me mid-month, her voice unusually hesitant. Mom, I was thinking about Christmas, she began. Daniel and I were wondering if maybe we could do something different this year, something simpler. What did you have in mind? I asked, curious. Well, instead of gifts, maybe we could just spend the day together? I could cook, or we could all pitch in. Just be together without the pressure of buying things. I sat down slowly on the edge of my bed, surprised by the suggestion and the emotion it stirred in me. That sounds lovely, Olivia. Really? You're not disappointed? Not at all, I assured her. Some of my favorite Christmas memories with you and Daniel had nothing to do with presents. Like when the power went out during that ice storm, she asked, a smile in her voice. And Dad rigged up that camping lantern so we could see to open gifts? And we all huddled under blankets in the living room and told ghost stories until the electricity came back on, I continued, the memory warming me from within. Daniel was so scared he insisted on sleeping between your father and me that night. Olivia laughed, the sound freer than I'd heard in years. He'll deny it if you bring it up now. Your secret is safe with me, I promised, smiling. After we hung up, I sat for a long moment, turning this new development over in my mind. A Christmas focused on presents rather than presents. It felt right, a return to what the holiday should be about, what it had been about when Richard was alive and money was tight but love was abundant. As Christmas approached, more surprises followed. Daniel showed up one weekend with a small but fresh pine tree, setting it up in the corner of my living room. I know it's not as big as we usually get, he said, adjusting the stand, but I thought it would be nice to have a real one again, like when we were kids. It's perfect, I told him, touched by the gesture and the memory it evoked. When they were young, we would make a day of cutting our own tree at a local farm, coming home cold and happy to decorate it with the mismatched ornaments we'd collected over the years. I found this in my closet, he said, pulling a small box from his jacket pocket. Inside was a clay ornament he had made in elementary school. A lopsided star painted gold with his school picture in the center, his 7-year-old smile missing 2 front teeth. I can't believe you kept this, I said, holding it carefully. He shrugged, a hint of color in his cheeks. I've been going through a lot of my old stuff, deciding what's worth keeping. Together we hung the ornament near the top of the tree, where the light caught its imperfect edges. The week before Christmas, Olivia invited me to her new apartment for dinner. It was my first visit to their new place, a modest but clean 2-bedroom in an older complex in Cary. The furnishings were sparse, mostly secondhand pieces that somehow worked together in an eclectic way. It's not much, she said, watching my face anxiously as I looked around. But the location is good. I can walk to work when the weather's nice. It has character, I said honestly, and it feels like a home. Her face relaxed into a smile. Thanks. That's what I was going for. Oh, and look. She pointed to a small desk in the corner of the living room, covered with sketches and a laptop. My own little design studio. I'm building a proper portfolio again, focusing on work I actually care about instead of just chasing the highest-paying clients. I examined some of her drawings. Clean, thoughtful designs with an artistic touch that had always been her strength. These are beautiful, Olivia. I've got an interview after the new year with a firm that specializes in nonprofit work, she said, a cautious pride in her voice. The pay would be less than corporate work, but the projects are more meaningful. That sounds perfect for you, I told her, remembering the idealistic young woman who had graduated college with dreams of using her design skills to help worthy causes, before the allure of luxury and status had pulled her in another direction. Daniel emerged from the kitchen where he had been stirring something that smelled wonderfully of garlic and herbs. Dinner's almost ready, he announced. Hope you like pasta primavera, Mom. When did you learn to cook? I asked, surprised. YouTube again, he admitted with a grin. Turns out cooking from scratch is a lot cheaper than takeout every night. Who knew? As we sat down to eat at their small dining table, actually a card table covered with a cloth, I was struck by how different this felt from our previous family gatherings. There was an ease between us that had been missing for years, a genuineness that couldn't be faked. I want to toast to Mom, Daniel said, raising his water glass, for being strong enough to do the hard thing. We wouldn't be here, like this, if you hadn't. Olivia raised her glass too. To Mom, she echoed, and to family. The real kind. I blinked back unexpected tears. To family, I agreed, my voice slightly unsteady. On Christmas morning, they arrived at my house early, arms laden with grocery bags rather than wrapped packages. We spent the day cooking together, laughing over botched recipes and kitchen mishaps, telling stories from the past, both the good memories and, carefully, some of the painful ones too. I still can't believe we did that to you, Olivia said as we sat around the dining table, the remains of our Christmas dinner scattered between us. The Hawaii trip, I mean. How could we have been so cruel? I considered her question, not dismissing it with an easy platitude. I think we had all fallen into roles that weren't healthy, I said finally. I was the giver. You were the takers. It became normal to all of us, even though it was hurting each of us in different ways. I used to justify it to myself, Daniel admitted, staring into his coffee cup. I'd think, she offers, so she must want to do it. Or, she can afford it, so it's not really hurting her. Anything to avoid looking at what I was really doing. And I enabled it, I acknowledged. Every time I said yes when I wanted to. Say no. Every time I put your wants above my needs. I was teaching you that my purpose was to serve yours. Olivia reached across the table and took my hand. I'm glad you stopped, she said quietly, even though it was painful at the time. I like who I'm becoming now a lot better than who I was then. As evening fell, we moved to the living room, where the small pine tree glowed with white lights. To my surprise, both of my children produced small wrapped packages from their coats. I thought we said no gifts? I asked, confused. Not expensive ones, Daniel clarified. Just meaningful ones. Olivia handed me her gift first, a flat rectangular package. Inside was a framed sketch she had done of our family, Richard, me, both children, based on an old photograph taken at the beach, when they were young. The detail was extraordinary, capturing Richard's laugh lines and the children's excited expressions as they built a sandcastle together. "This is incredible," I whispered, tracing the lines with my finger. "You've always had such a gift." "I found the old photo while I was packing for the move," she explained. "It reminded me of who we were before. Everything. I thought, maybe it could help remind us who we want to be again." Daniel's gift was smaller, a flash drive in a simple box. "It's all the family videos from Dad's old camcorder," he explained. "I had them digitized. Some of them are pretty bad quality, but it's his voice, you know? I thought you might want to hear it again." I held the small drive in my palm, feeling its weight, so light yet containing so much. Richard's laugh, his voice calling the children in for dinner, perhaps even some footage of me that I had forgotten existed. It was a gift beyond price. "Thank you," I said simply, unable to find words adequate to express what it meant to me. "We have one more surprise," Olivia said, exchanging a glance with Daniel. "It's not wrapped, though." Daniel pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to me. Inside was a confirmation for 3 tickets to Hawaii, dated for next June after my Grand Canyon trip. My heart stuttered. "I don't understand." "We've been saving," Olivia explained quickly. "Both of us, putting aside a little from each paycheck. It's not the luxury resort we went to before, just a simple hotel. But it's the trip Dad always wanted us to take, as a family. All 3 of us," Daniel emphasized, "the way it should have been the first time." I stared at the confirmation, emotions battling within me. Gratitude, hesitation, a lingering wariness of being hurt again. "You don't have to decide right now," Olivia assured me, reading my expression. "The tickets are transferable, but we wanted you to know that we understand what we took from you, and we want to make it right if you'll let us." I looked at my children, really looked at them, and saw not the entitled adults who had stood on my porch demanding money, but something new emerging. People capable of remorse, of growth, of genuine care. "I'll think about it," I promised. And I meant it. As they prepared to leave that night, each hugged me with a warmth that felt real, not perfunctory. At the door, Olivia paused. "This was the best Christmas I can remember in years," she said softly. "Thank you for giving us another chance, Mom. I know we didn't deserve it." "Love isn't about deserving," I told her, the words coming to me with the clarity of revelation. "It's about choosing. Every day we choose who and how to love. I'm learning that, and I think you are too." She nodded, her eyes bright, with tears and Christmas lights. "I am," she whispered. "I really am." After they left, I sat alone in my quiet house, looking at Richard's face in the drawing Olivia had made. What would he think of all this? The breakdown and tentative rebuilding of our family. "We're trying, Rich," I said aloud to the empty room. "All of us. It's messy and imperfect, but we're trying." And somehow, in the silence, I felt his approval, or maybe it was just my own spring in Raleigh painted the world in soft greens and vibrant pinks, dogwoods and azaleas competing for attention against newly leafed trees. My knee had healed completely, the scar a silver line that I wore with a certain pride, a reminder of putting myself first after years of neglect. In March, I had taken my Grand Canyon trip as planned. Standing at the rim, watching the play of light and shadow across that vast expanse, I had felt a profound sense of perspective. My own struggles seemed both significant and small against such ancient grandeur, worthy of honoring, yet part of a much larger pattern of growth, erosion, and renewal. I had sent my children postcards from the trip, brief messages about the majesty of the landscape, the kindness of my fellow travelers, the joy of finally seeing a place I had dreamed of visiting for decades. They had responded with genuine enthusiasm, free of the subtle resentment that might once have colored their reaction to my independent adventures. Now, as May warmed toward June, the Hawaii question loomed larger. The tickets they had purchased as a Christmas gift remained valid, waiting for my decision. Did I trust this new version of our relationship enough to risk another Hawaii disappointment? Could I separate the place itself from the betrayal it represented? Janet, as usual, had strong opinions on the matter. "It's a gesture, Linda," she said, as we walked through the farmer's market one Saturday morning. "A meaningful one. But you're not obligated to accept it if it brings back too many bad memories." I examined a display of strawberries, selecting a pint of particularly ripe ones. That's just it. I'm not sure how I feel anymore. There are moments when I'm completely confident in the changes they've made, and others when I catch myself waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's normal, after everything, she assured me. Trust takes time to rebuild. But from where I'm standing, and I've been watching pretty carefully, let me tell you, they really do seem different, especially in how they treat you. It was true. Over the past 6 months, the transformation had proven to be more than temporary. Olivia had secured the position with the nonprofit design firm and thrived there, finding purpose in creating materials for environmental and social justice campaigns. Daniel had been promoted to assistant manager at the sporting goods store and was taking business courses at the community college, maintaining his 4.0 GPA with evident pride. More importantly, our relationship had shifted from transactional to reciprocal. They visited regularly, not to ask for help but to offer it or simply to spend time together. When I had caught a nasty flu in February, they had taken turns checking on me, bringing soup and medicine without being asked. Small gestures, but revelatory in their newness. There had been challenges, too. Moments when old patterns threatened to reemerge. Daniel had called once, his voice tight with stress, to say his car needed repairs he couldn't immediately afford. I had felt the familiar pull to rescue, to solve the problem with my checkbook. Instead, I had listened, empathized, and then asked, "What are your options?" After a pause, he had outlined several possibilities, putting the repair on a credit card and paying it off over time, asking for extra shifts at work, even selling some old electronics he no longer used. Not once did he directly ask me for money. "Those all sound like solid approaches," I had told him. "Let me know what you decide." In the end, he had worked overtime for 2 weeks and sold his rarely used gaming system. The pride in his voice when he told me the car was fixed was worth far more than the temporary relief my money would have provided. As May drew to a close, I made my decision. We were having dinner at my house, a regular Sunday tradition now, when I brought out 3 folders and placed them on the table. "What's this?" Olivia asked, setting down her fork. "Information packets," I explained, "for our trip to Hawaii next month." Their faces lit up simultaneously, Daniel actually pumping his fist in a gesture of victory that made me laugh. "You'll come?" Olivia asked, her voice bright with hope. "I'll come," I confirmed, "but I have a few conditions." They both nodded, suddenly serious. "First, we split expenses while we're there. Meals, activities, souvenirs. I know you bought the tickets, and that was incredibly generous, but I want this to be a truly shared experience." "Absolutely," Daniel agreed immediately. "We've been saving for that too." "Second, we each get to choose at least one activity that's important to us, and everyone participates without complaint." Olivia smiled. "What's on your list, Mom?" "The Pearl Harbor Memorial," I said without hesitation. "Your father always wanted to see it. And a traditional luau, the touristy kind with fire dancers and all. I don't care if it's cliché." "Done and done," Daniel said. "I want to try surfing lessons. And I want to hike to at least one waterfall," Olivia added. "One of the less crowded ones, if possible." "Third condition," I continued, my voice softening. "We talk about your father while we're there. We remember him. This was his dream trip, too." They both reached for my hands across the table, a circle of connection that felt unbreakable in that moment. "We will," Olivia promised, her eyes bright with tears. Every day, the month that followed was a flurry of preparation, shopping for appropriate clothing, researching the best local restaurants, debating which island excursions were worth the time and money. It felt like planning a first trip together, rather than a do-over of a painful memory. When the departure date arrived, we met at the airport with a mixture of excitement and nervous energy. As we checked our bags and moved toward security, I felt a momentary flash of déjà vu, last year's hopes and disappointments ghosting through my mind. Olivia caught my hesitation, her expression turning serious. "Mom, I want you to know, this is already different. You're here. We're together. Whatever happens in Hawaii, that already makes this trip a success in my book." Daniel nodded agreement, adding, "Last time was about running away from our problems. This time is about running towards something better. Together." Their sincerity steadied me, and I moved forward with renewed confidence. The trip itself was nothing like I had imagined during those lonely days after the original betrayal. It wasn't perfect. We had our moments of tension, like when Daniel got sunburned the first day and became uncharacteristically grumpy, or when Olivia's waterfall hike turned out to be more strenuous than advertised, leaving us all muddy and exhausted. But these were normal family frictions, not the deep wounds of the past. We worked through them with humor and patience, finding our way back to enjoyment each time. On our last evening in Hawaii, we sat on the beach watching the sunset paint the sky in spectacular oranges and pinks. The warm breeze carried. The scent of plumeria and distant ukulele music drifted from a nearby restaurant. I wish Dad could have seen this, Daniel said quietly, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He would have loved it, I agreed, feeling Richard's absence as a bittersweet ache rather than the sharp pain it had once been. But I think he'd be happy knowing we made it here together. Do you think he'd be proud of us? Olivia asked, her voice small. After everything? I considered her question carefully, wanting my answer to be honest rather than merely comforting. I think he'd be proud of who you're becoming now. He always believed in growth and second chances. It's one of the things I loved most about him. We sat in companionable silence as the last sliver of sun disappeared beneath the horizon. The moment felt sacred somehow, a punctuation mark at the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Thank you, I said finally, looking at each of them. Not just for this trip, but for the work you've both done this past year. I know it hasn't been easy. Thank you for not giving up on us, Daniel replied. You could have, you know. After Hawaii, after everything. That's not what family does. I said simply. Olivia's smile was radiant in the gathering twilight. No, it's not. Returning to Raleigh after 10 days in paradise brought its own kind of contentment. My house welcomed me back with familiar comfort, and I found myself eager to return to my painting class, my garden, the rhythm of the life I had built for myself over the past year. A week after our return, Janet came over for our regular Friday night wine and conversation. She listened attentively as I recounted the highlights of the trip, studying my face for signs of lingering disappointment or regret. So it was actually good? She asked, her skepticism finally giving way to cautious optimism. Truly? It was healing, I told her. For all of us. And now? What happens next with you three? I sipped my wine, thoughtfully. We keep doing the work. They're coming for dinner on Sunday, our regular tradition. Daniel's bringing a girl he's been seeing, a fellow student from his business class. Olivia's helping me plant my vegetable garden next weekend. Normal family stuff, Janet observed. Exactly. Normal, healthy family stuff. I smiled at my oldest friend. With proper boundaries this time. Later that night, after Janet had gone, I stood in my kitchen looking at the refrigerator door. Where once it had been covered with unpaid bills and urgent reminders, it now held a collection of happier markers. A magnet from the Grand Canyon. A photo of the three of us in Hawaii, squinting in the sunlight, the ocean behind us. A save-the-date card for a colleague's retirement party. A postcard Olivia had, sent me from a design conference in Chicago. Evidence of a life expanded beyond the narrow confines of sacrifice and obligation. Evidence of a family healing, imperfectly but sincerely. I ran my fingers over the Hawaii photo, remembering the moment it was taken. A friendly tourist offering to capture the three of us together, the slight awkwardness as we arranged ourselves. Then the genuine smiles that broke through as the camera clicked. Only for family, I whispered. The phrase transformed from a weapon of exclusion to a declaration of inclusion. A reminder of what we had lost and found again. Different but perhaps stronger for having been broken and carefully mended. Outside, a spring rain began to fall, gentle and cleansing. I made myself a cup of tea and curled up in my favorite chair. By the window, watching the raindrops illuminate briefly in the streetlight before disappearing into the darkness. Each one individual, yet part of something larger. Each one following its own path down to nourish the waiting earth below. I thought about the day on my porch nearly a year ago, the confrontation that had changed everything. The moment when I had finally said the words that set us all free from patterns that were slowly destroying us. The beginning of a journey none of us had expected to take. The rain continued to fall, rhythmic and soothing. Within its gentle percussion, I found the perfect peace of knowing that sometimes the greatest act of love is standing firm, not in anger or revenge, but in the quiet certainty that everyone deserves the dignity of facing their own truth. Even those we love most, especially those we love most. Only for family.